soccer down here. Jason got me hooked. I blame him. So it is now that time. It's the last half hour of the show on Thursday, which means that we go to the left coast where, they say the left coast is the best coast. That means that this guy is dropping in for the last half hour of the show on Thursday. Niko!
What is going on, John? SDH family, happy to be here. 2 hours sleep today. Second cup of coffee. Trying to figure it out. I didn't have time to do my hair. Absolutely nothing. That's what happens when you have a colleague that was doing the Apple TV call yesterday and went out, grabbed some dinner and a beer with him, and then you're late, running back, trying to watch some games. So exciting, especially on a Wednesday where if my brain was still working correctly, I counted 35 goals on a Wednesday. So it was a good one. Excited to be on because there's a lot to talk about.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and talk about your late night and what happened. What happened with Seattle. So I'll just go ahead and lay it all out for you. What happened with Seattle last night?
Oh man, a little bit more of what we've been seeing from the Seattle team, and it's becoming not just frustrating but worrisome that a team this late in the season continues to have the same flaws, continues to have the same issues. One particular one is closing out games and not being able to, as a possession-based team, defend yourself with the ball and move it around and not just absorb pressure for X amount of time. Because we just talked about this when it came to St. Louis, right? The game was won. The points were taken. But the way of the game is not getting any better. And that game they should have drawn. And St. Louis was on top of them. Joel Klaus got the shot on a post, and it was a little bit of the same here against RSL. It was just a lack of conviction and a lack of experience on how to do some gamemanship, right? A little bit of the dark arts if you have to. It doesn't matter. You just have to be able to close out a game that you basically had won with minutes left of the second half. So that's not the only problem. I mean, in this one, Seattle gets a very rotated RSL team. And I want to start by that. This was not a first class, all your players are in RSL to start off the game. And even with some rotation, no Chicho, no Crooks, no Ojeda. I mean, the Seattle Sounders were kind of chasing the ball a little bit. They got dispossessed. The tempo was taken, and the tempo was written by RSL's play in that first half. Seattle got some chances, and they did it being a little more direct. And I'm going to have to ask at one point if it's time to switch it up a little bit for Seattle and just be more direct and just throw the ball and hope to repress and get it on the other side, kind of not battle and don't allow the other team to choose that first line of confrontation. But they got a couple of chances, and that's all right. I thought Christian put a lot of effort. I thought that Albert Rusnák wasn't great, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But Seattle was at least attempting some things. Second half came around. I thought they were a little bit better. But when it comes to consistency, when it comes to a team that is used to having not just a style of play, but just being able to impose their will, it's concerning that even a rotated RSL team can come to Lumen Field, where Seattle has only one win this season, and basically play at their own rhythm and expose Seattle at the end of the game with some of those players that maybe should have started, right? Because Chicho came on, Crooks came on, Ojeda came on, and then you started seeing a little bit of a shift on how good RSL was. So um, Albert Rusnák, I know he got the goal, and it was a great goal. I think he took advantage of a poorly set wall and a 19-year-old goalkeeper that maybe was not properly placed where he should have been. But that takes credit, right? That takes some doing, that takes some talent, some quality to put the ball where Albert put it. No, I'm not going to take any credit from uh, the Sounders Cam. But other than that goal, there was just so much negligence with the ball. There was such a disconnect with Raul. There was such a disconnect with the wingers. Jordan Morris wasn't influential, and it wasn't up to his fault. I think it was because he just wasn't getting the ball enough. So Seattle's tactics just need some changing because they are stagnant. Is not good enough, and the record speaks for itself. So are changes going to have to happen here in Seattle? Perhaps you cannot continue to wait for Pedro de la Vega to try to get healthy, and that's just it. You played a better team. You got I want to call it kind of hard hard fought point, but you dropped two. And it's plain and simple. You just drop points at home. That continue to be a problem for Seattle this whole season.
And Jarrett now joining us. And Jarrett, we're talking about what happened last night with Seattle. Niko's running on 2 hours of sleep because he was hanging out with the night owls last night, and he's on his second cup of coffee this morning. And so we've gone through what's going on in Seattle. 1-1-5 at home. Jarrett, your first question for Niko on a Thursday.
Okay, yeah. I'll take your mind off Seattle for a minute. What at this point? What is not broken in Kansas City out west? Because if I'm not mistaken, the Cauldron was screaming "Fire Peter" last night.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting, man. I mean, 2 wins the whole year. Yesterday's another um, poorly performed, poorly handled um, game. Vancouver is not the big bad wolf, and they have good players. I'm not going to say that they're not. They are a quality team, but we've seen over the last 2-3 weeks where they really are at. And even then, I thought Vancouver dominated that game. Maybe not possession, but they had a better idea. It was easier for them to get from point A to point B. And the problem with Sporting Kansas City has been all over. It hasn't just been defensively, hasn't just been in the midfield, but they also can't get goals. Uh, a lot like Seattle, I feel like this is a team that has been running on the same tactics, the same philosophy, the same ideology for a very long time. And I think it could be time for some changes. We thought last season, I think, that he was kind of on the verge of also maybe being let go, but it just hasn't happened. And that's just kind of the way Sporting Kansas City is structured, right? Because Peter Vermees has the keys to every room in the stadium. I mean, he's the GM, he's the coach, he is the everything. So it's kind of tough for them down there, but I think it's beyond the roster, it's beyond the talent. I just also think that there is time for a new regimen there in Sporting Kansas City.
You mentioned when we started our discussion about your match last night, there was a moment early on involving, I want to say it was Diego Luna and an action either right outside the 18, inside the 18. It was initially called as a penalty. It goes to VAR. It's pulled back as a free kick just outside the 18 with Atlanta United's favorite center ref, Sergi Boyko. What did you think about that particular activity last night, VAR intervening and getting it correct because it was a foul that happened just outside the 18?
I thought the referee did a great job throughout the whole game. VAR in this one was spot on. The moment of contact out of the box, it obviously helped the home team because that would have been a whole different game if RSL gets that possibility to get that PK in. Yamar's a little late on the play, yes, but where he makes contact is out of the box. So I thought that the description by the referee in the call was finally excellent. It was proper. It had details.
You could hear it because we couldn't hear it. It sounded like the teacher from Peanuts when he was here in Atlanta last week. It was, you guys actually got to hear what the actual call was and the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had somebody come over and tell me, because I was helping the guys from 1360 AM do some Spanish radio call yesterday. So person comes in and kind of mentioned what the referee had said. We give him the proper credit. But I'm guessing that it was probably a little distorted in the noise from what he was saying. But I like the fact that he did get that correctly. I thought that even when there was a little bit of physical play, he allowed the physical play to happen. He allowed the game to go on. I thought that the referee and VAR was really good. But to talk about a couple more things on this Seattle game, because they're the home team, and I need to provide a little bit more on that. There are good things here and there. I mean, overall, it's just not good enough. And there's no passing that. There's no bypassing the fact that the Seattle Sounders team, especially when it comes to the bench, there just isn't that player, that experienced player, or that guy that's going to come in and provide something different. But Reed Baker-Whiten, I mean, this guy has all the talent in the world, I think, and he's spoken about as the biggest prospect, the one that has the most potential. And yesterday, he looked really, really good on the wing. I mean, the way he glides on the field, the way he gets forward, his services into the box. That goal that could have been the 2-1 that gets taken back because Moose cannot get out of his own way. I mean, he hasn't just missed in front of goal, but yesterday he trips himself because he commits the foul on that breakaway, on that transition moment, then makes a great run. Obviously, Reed Baker-Whiten does the entire play. He gets forward. He's strong. He takes off the defender, and then he passes it to Moose. Moose puts it away. And they go to VAR. He gets looked at. There was absolutely a foul when it comes to Moose. So, unfortunately for Musovski, it is not his year. He needs to do something to get the bad luck off of him, because if it's not missing the goals, is just getting in your own way. But Reed Baker-Whiten was the one player that I thought came in, made things look different, gave Seattle different dimension, different type of player. But it all goes back to talent. It all goes back to quality. It all goes back to players that should be playing better, not playing at their top potential. And that's all around the field. Again, I don't want to harp on just Albert Rusnák, because he did come from a decent game at St. Louis. But in this one, it was the goal and nothing else. There was just not enough from your 10, from the guy that's supposed to be amplifying everybody around you. I think that Christian Roldan also needs to be a little bit more influential. Jackson Reagan, a bunch of issues getting out of the back. I mean, Real Salt Lake did not capitalize on those mistakes, but that was the rotated RSL. Chicho's not missing some of those shots. So that's exactly where Seattle needs to figure out that it's good to gain points and it's good to stay relevant. It's good to stay close to that playoff line. But if they don't improve and find consistency, then there's just no point, because they're going to get to the playoffs, not be consistent, and be bounced out in the first round.
Jared Smith with Niko Moreno on a Thursday.
So I'm going to give you let's pretend for a minute that I have locked Dolo in a closet because people are asking about the LAFC game. I'm going to lock him in the closet and give you the keys. This LAFC team, since the last time we spoke, when they were kind of scuffling, and I know you were still high on them, and they have paid you back with some good performances. When you bring in Giroud, how would you line up that attack? Because you have pieces that are clicking in a way right now. How would you put him in a way that would maximize what you think they could do?
Oh, man, that's a good question. And I feel like it writes itself. Obviously, Giroud's going to be a different type of 9, and a lot of the freedom that band of three has might go away a little bit because you don't want Giroud out wide. You want him to pivot. You want him to retain. You want him to hold. You want him to be that target guy. But when you got Kike on one side and you got Denise in the other, I mean, you're looking pretty good, whether it's services in the box, whether it's Giroud coming back a little bit and allowing the overlap to happen. I mean, there's just a lot of potential for some great play. So if your question goes to Boguts, I think you could drop him back a line. I think he could play the midfield. Obviously, I like Tillman. Obviously, Atuesta needs to be in. But I feel like the other one, I understand Ilya Sanchez is still, a main guy. But there could be a rotating door in that midfield. Or same difference goes for if Kike Oliveira's not having a great game, you have Boguts. So I think it just creates depth, because if there's a question we've had about this roster, what's depth, right? I mean, there's a lot of prospects, some really good players, but exactly how short, how deep can this team be? I think they can be very deep. They have some decent pieces in that bench, but with Giroud, you get even better. So I just think that band of three is going to be written with Sharpie and Magnum and Sharpie, because that's what you want, is getting that big presence, that big scorer that's supposed to provide you something a little bit different. Because there have been times this season where Bouanga hasn't been exactly as sharp as he was last season, although if we look at his stats, you're like, Niko, what are you talking about? I'm just comparing him to last season, all right, guys, where he was just putting everything away. So I just think it's kind of written in stone. And Boguts, I feel like it's a guy that can provide some versatility. He'd be a guy that'd be okay not playing all the minutes. And we saw what he did yesterday. I mean, that banger that he put away, I mean, it was a little bit of a knuckleball with some real high speed. And just there was nothing that St. Clair could do to stop that. Oh, and honestly, when it comes to Lloris, a guy that loves to just go direct and mash it right to Giroud, those secondary balls, right? That netting when you're kind of coming back. I think that there's so many options for this LAFC team to just be good that they did pay me, but I mean, it was kind of written in the water. I mean, you knew that LAFC had the talent. You knew what they could potentially do in a Western Conference that was shaky, and it had a whole bunch of teams overperforming. Minnesota, overperforming. Vancouver, overperforming. I thought Colorado was overperforming. I thought Houston, they could be there. But the real bad, strong teams just weren't there this season. So LAFC is going to continue to be high. They're going to continue to be my candidate to be first in the Western Conference, just fighting RSL. That is the one team that can give LAFC trouble. Is the balance, the depth, the quality, and a relentless team. You saw them yesterday. It's funny. I talked to Carlos Gomez, who was so good against Seattle yesterday. He never gave up. He was constantly pushing, and he's a guy that's having a huge season. And that could be a team that maybe is going to battle AFC for more of that contention in the top of the West. But other than that, man, it's LAFC, RSL, maybe the Galaxy, and then there's a drop after that.
I was going to say there are two teams in the West that have not lost at home this year, and they're both in the same city. You go from downtown to Carson. All you got to do is go down the 5, and you go from one to the other, and you see where the Goodyear blimp hangs out, and that's where LAG's hanging out. Ben Olsen apparently wanted to fight Ricky Puig after the last match that they had on the weekend. After the match was over, Ricky Puig has now gone platinum blonde, and LA 4-0-3 at home, second in the West, in a very crowded stuff up top with RSL at 30, LAG's at 28, LAFC's at 27. It's amazing what happens when Greg Vanney gets to spend money on Puig, Peck, and Paintsel.
I think it's important to give Kuntz credit where credit is due. I feel like it's not like the recruiting, the scouting change, but it was the decisions made and the type of players you brought in. So yes, I think it's different when you give Greg Vanney a healthy team, a good team with some players that are not stuck together with glue and tape, like Acosta. So it's definitely a difference, and you're seeing it with LAG. And thank goodness that Ricky got his hair right finally, because he was trying to look like Dragon Ball Z. He ended up looking like Garfield, and he got it right finally again for this one. He looked really good. I thought that goal where he takes on everybody and then he gives a little bit of a toe touch to finish it just tells you everything you need to know about Ricky Push and the way he's taking on this season.
Jarrett Smith with our man from the Soccer Bar in Pulso Sports.
Yeah, so I want to take it back up to Cascadia and ask, because I know you mentioned Vancouver. How is it that we're living in this world right now where, like, Vancouver seems like the stable team in Cascadia? Because for so long, it kind of felt like they were the also-ran. Even going back, 10 years where, it's Portland figuring themselves out, Seattle with their run, like, how are we through the wormhole this deep? And I guess how do you kind of correct ship if you are Seattle or Portland to kind of get it back to what everyone's used to?
Yeah, I just think that they are the steady team. I mean, you look at a Sounders team that is in the verge of a generational change, that it's dying to be revamped, and you're seeing it on the field. You no longer have those key DP players that are game changers and defiant and can just put it all together for you. And on the Portland side, you went from an era, and I thought a successful one with Giovanni Savarese handling everything, to now Phil Neville, who has his own issues strategically. I think tactically, he's a coach that sometimes makes me wonder why he's doing certain things, but he does have a very good roster, has a lot of talent. So that's why there's such a disbalance sometimes from this Portland team. At times they look like they can score a bunch of goals, and others they look like they really can't do much of anything. Defensively, they're very poor, despite having some decent players, and some changes have been made where they looked a little bit better. But you did play Austin, right? So you got to put that in consideration. You won 3 of 5, absolutely, but you beat San Jose, you beat Sporting Kansas City, and that's just where kind of things are laid out. So we'll see how better they are. And Vancouver, by the hand of Vinny, that is so passionate. Yesterday you saw him smack Peter Vermeesen's hand, and Peter, he looked upset, man. I mean, but that's Vinny. Sartini, he's such a passionate guy. He's such a goofy guy. I don't know. But that's just the way he puts it together. I feel like he's got a group that's bought in. I feel like he's got a group that plays to his strengths. And he also does a good job at creating the tempo of the game and the concepts to fit the best part of his team. So I just think they are the stable team because of the guy leading the charge.
All right, folks have been asking, and they want your opinion. We spent the first hour of the show discussing Atlanta United taking Messi and friends out back and grabbing a switch and beating them 3-1 last night. And folks are wondering what you thought about that particular performance, and is it something that sticks? Is it a one-off? There are parallels, it seems, with Atlanta and Seattle right now, and more than just the coaching touchline. What did you think about what happened last night in Fort Lauderdale?
I thought it was great. I thought it could have been 5-1. I thought that this was a team that finally got what we were asking for when it came to their top players. Almada looked different. He looked like he was trying to do his best Lionel Messi impression, including that first goal where, yes, Saba does, fantastic, but it's Almada who starts it off, and he's pushing guys through, and he's beating guys off the dribble, and he's creating these balances by just pushing the ball. I thought Miami was a little flat, if not very flat defensively. I mean, it seemed like they didn't believe that Saba could shoot from mid-range. I mean, they were just, hey, go ahead and take that shot. And he said, let's do this. So defensively, they were really good. I thought that in the midfield, Dax looked finally like vintage Dax with some leadership, some ability to just cut spaces. Mujamba is a guy that I feel like could do a lot for this team, but he needs to be more consistent. Yesterday, he was really good. And I think as long as he's good, this team has an anchor, has a balance they at times don't have. And my final note was maybe they should stick to the three in the back. I mean, it gives them a little bit of a higher floor. It keeps them a bit more organized as long as they're able to distribute from the back. And I thought that they did that well yesterday because I saw Wiley get into better positions. Leonard's been good all season, but I thought yesterday he looked even more confident. The overlaps, the underlaps, I just thought that Atlanta, first of all, had the right idea, had the confidence. And I think that Gonzalo was ready to do or die. I mean, he talked a lot before this game, right? I'm going to handle Messi. I'm going to do this. He just seemed like he said, put it on me. He said, don't put it on my players. Put it on me. And I thought that was pretty smart of him. And he said he talked to Saba before the game, challenged them to be better, to be more confident. It just seems like all the right buttons were pressed by Gonzalo Pineda. And I know that this doesn't change the whole season. And I'm not sitting here to tell you that it's all good and well. This was a big game. This could be a momentum shifter, but it's about consistency. It's about putting it into Saturday. Can you put it together once again against Charlotte? That is a team that has been hard to beat. They did lose. They lost that 5 consecutive clean sheets that they had. So can you do that? I feel like Atlanta can. I just thought that all the right buttons were pressed and all of the players that needed to be at their best were there. And that was a huge changer for this Atlanta team.
Jared, hit it.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you, I guess, about that because it's been the discussion with Pineda, and I guess I don't know how much has been discussed out west with you with Brian Schmetzer because they're different tenures. You know, Schmetzer's a legend at this point. How do you strike that balance when you're struggling between sticking with, kind of going out on your shield, sticking with what you know, but balancing maybe a little bit of pragmatism, but not getting so deep in your shell that you lose who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balancing act, but I feel like Gonzalo is a guy that, unlike Brian, he's more of a new age coach where, and I've said this 1,000 times, it's really difficult to be successful on a grand scale when you have one way of play. There are times where you're going to have to change your tactics, where you're going to have to be more direct, where you're going to have to play with 3 in the back, with 4 in the back. I feel like Brian, the Peter Bermises, the Bruce Arena, those guys just, they play one way, and that's the way they're going to do it. Caleb Porter is another one. But Gonzalo, I think he's more of a new age coach where he can just change things up and decide at times be pragmatic. At times he doesn't want to. At times he wants to get forward. So I think that's where that balancing act is just having an ideology, but understanding that at times a game can change. So regardless of, I feel like Gonzalo Pineda, if anything showed, is something that we talked about last show, was there's definitely not a disconnect with the players. And it seems like they do believe. It didn't seem like they gave up on anything, like maybe some people believed that that's what was going on there. I saw a very committed team and a very united team against Inter Miami.
All right, let's play cliffhanger. A couple of matchups since you get the weekend off. There's no Seattle to discuss this weekend.
Right.
So you got international window. DC United hosting Toronto. DC United's a -156. Draws a +321. Toronto's a +369 on the road.
Ooh, give me Toronto. Give me Toronto. I'm high on Toronto. I know that not every time can they get the results, but I thought that they should have won yesterday. I mean, they were right there. Bernadeschi literally misses a sitter in front of goal, but I like what they do. I like the way that Harmon has kind of shifted this team. I see everybody bought in. I know that maybe there's a little bit of concern when it comes to depth and it comes to being a good defensive team, but in all general senses, man, I like Toronto. I feel like they got the goods, and DC United is a team that can be very very, very black or white. I mean, they can be really good. They can be really poor. I feel like Toronto's floor is really high every single time. Their ceiling might not be huge, but their floor is very high. I like them in this one, especially under those numbers.
Messi and friends hosting all caps St. Louis City on the road is north of plus 600. Is this a get right for Messi and friends at a minus 263?
Yes, I feel like this is the easy one not an easy one. Let me rephrase that. I feel like this is a game that plays to Inter Miami's strengths. I feel like St. Louis, despite getting Lewin back, they just don't look as dominant as they have at certain times last season. The goals are not coming as easy, and although I like Pompeo and I like what Klaus does with the movements, and they certainly are a team that could put things together, I feel like Inter Miami is just in a better place, and they'll probably end up taking this one at least by a couple of goals.
RSL hosting Austin at a minus 167. Austin's basically pushing plus 400. Is this a get right for RSL?
I mean, there's nothing to get right about, man. I mean, this RSL team, again, came to Seattle with a rotated lineup and rescued a point on the road. They're 12 games unbeaten. They have all of the talent in the world, man. I was looking at the roster and the salary cap, and I could not believe that they have Andres Gomez for less than 300,000 in the salary cap, and they have Chicho for I think it's $2 million and a little bit, and they got Crooks and $1 million salary. I mean, man, the way they're using the salary in RSL is just beautiful. And I'm gonna say one more thing, and I know I'm gonna take too long, and I probably shouldn't because I got a show right after this. But Carlos Gomez, man, yesterday we talked to him, and I have to tell you guys this. I guess he had heard that they would call him the little devil or the devil. That was just like a nickname. And he's like, man, I hate that name. And I hate anything that has to do with the devil. That's not cool. But the other nickname is Tinito, which is like little Tino or Junior Tino. Tino is a Colombian soccer player, Faustino Asprilla, my favorite player growing up. He played in Newcastle. He played in Parma. He was a guy that, quite honestly, had he been disciplined and wasn't a ladies' man and all of these things, he would have been amazing. I mean, I remember he scored a hat trick on Barcelona. I mean, this guy was amazing. He was fast. He was relentless. He was a lot like Carlos, man. So it was really cool to talk to him. And his season has been fantastic. This RSL team just has all the gifts, man. I had to tell you that little story because I got to talk to him. We'll hear him on Soccer Bar here in a little bit. But the guy is a talented soccer player. He is someone that is giving this RSL team a lot of confidence, man. And you just got to applaud it. Applaud Pablo. Applaud RSL. In this one, there's nothing to get right about. They'll win it. I have no doubt about that, especially against this Austin squad.
Last one's Atlanta and Charlotte. Atlanta's at home after everybody's played in the midweek. Atlanta's a minus 120. Charlotte's north of plus 300.
Yeah, I think Atlanta takes this one. And there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to be able to push it back. What's the number on Atlanta again?
Minus 120.
Yeah, there's no way you're taking that. But either way, I feel like that's one you want to stay away from when it comes to the use boxes, but that you do want to see. I don't expect it to be a blowout either. I wouldn't take the over on goals. I think Kalina's the best goalkeeper in the league right now. He's my choice for the MLS All-Star team. So I still think Atlanta will take this one. I do feel like they're going to run on this inertia that beating Messi and friends does, because they beat Messi and friends. They didn't just beat a rotated team. No, they beat them, and they beat them right. So I feel like this is going to be a huge push for this squad. So I'll take Atlanta.
Plug it. What's going on Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports?
Well, Soccer Bar actually is starting right now. So if you want to check everything out in Spanish, go ahead and switch over. Our guy that John Rojas, who's also the guy that was working for Apple yesterday, who I went out with after the game. He's actually traveling, so he's going to do the show an hour early. So I'll be hopping on off here and into soccer bar, but I had to see y'all. You know, you're my favorite peeps, man. Even if I have to be a little bit late to my own show, I'm always gonna do it for John and for Jared.
All right. Get out of here, my friend. We'll see you next week.
Appreciate it, man.
Have a good one, guys.
All right. There goes
Adios.
Niko. He's going from one show to the other. Jared, as we put a bow on this one, 2 hours later, you came in when we started. You're here when we're done. 2 hours later, what's stuck in your mind about today, the day after?
Like I said, you got to strike that balance.